It's my pleasure to welcome you all to Tech Refresh. We're talking about advancements in automation. So interesting conversation tonight. We're going to have experts in the government space talk to us about digital security as well as advancements in cyber automation. With that, I'm going to turn us over to Cameron Cherry. He's going to give us some opening remarks. He is the Chief Technology Officer with Dell EMC Federal. So thanks so much, Cameron.
Thanks, Dell. Good evening, everyone. What better way to start a meeting than a few cocktails and let our hair down? Very grateful to Government Executive Media Group and those properties that always inform us and educate us in the federal sector space. We also, again, want to extend another bit of gratitude to our partners at Intel. We've done some tremendous things together over the years, and we really look forward to what we're doing for this next fiscal year and some of the great advancements that are coming on in computing. When we really talk about the advancements of what you're going to hear tonight with the intersection of artificial intelligence and cyber, this really is a precipice, right? And as we look at the precipice of this is the next generation of cybersecurity. Those of us that practice this, and we're all practitioners, recognize that the last 10 to 15 years of conventional thinking are done, right? The threat's getting more advanced. The data that we have to analyze is getting more advanced. So without the intersection of the machine learning and cybersecurity information assets, we don't have a future, right? So we really need to be looking at that. So we're very grateful to those professionals in the room that are practitioners, that have an interest in these subjects. Very grateful to be partnered with this team. And we look forward to just a stupendous evening. So thank you, everybody, for attending, and we look forward to the program this evening. Oh, I would be totally remiss. As my boss in the room, he left, didn't he? Did not. So there's a compelling event that's occurred. So I've checked Twitter. President Trump has not done anything in the last 10 minutes. But there is a compelling event that's happened. The Modernizing Government Technology Act has passed. So how do we get access to innovation, and how do we get access to the innovation for cyber and advanced analytics is through these types of funds. And there's been no greater supporter of the predecessor of FITARA or the Management of Government Technology Act than my boss and leader, Senior Vice President and General Manager Steve Harris. We've been strong advocates on the Hill, and we absolutely recommend you advocate for the same. This is how we advance our government, and we get full access to the innovation and technology that's available to us. All right, thank you. No, I think there was a tweet about that, so there's another compelling event for tonight. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the program.
Thank you so much, Cameron, and for sharing those updates. So lots of things happening this evening. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up our panel. First, we have Terry Furman, if you want to join us. She's the Principal Director for DoD CIO Cybersecurity at the Department of Defense. Next, we have Jeff Wagner. He's the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer at OPM. And then this conversation will be moderated by NextGov Senior Correspondent Joe Marks. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for being here, and especially anyone who's here this morning. Thank you for sticking around. And I think it passed the Senate, right? We still need to go to conference on it. So all the champagne was uncorking. If you're an advocate, call your congresswoman. So topic for tonight is cyber automation, and I've covered this topic some, and a thing that always strikes me is you sort of have to define your terms. You don't know exactly what people mean when they say cyber automation. It's a really broad term. So I thought a good way to start would be for Terry and Jeff, if you could just give me a couple of sentences in the plainest English you can. When you talk about cyber automation, when you talk about it tonight, what are you talking about?
So when you talk about cyber automation, I think over the years it has changed. And as of today, when you're talking automation, you're looking for the most efficiencies to migrate manual labor, manual tasks, things that you normally have analysis or analysts or people of that nature do, and you move it to where automation or IT components, technologies, solutions can do a lot of these manual tasks. Not only to make it more efficient and quicker and respond quicker, but also in order to get better efficiencies out of your labor workforce. Because cyber, though we're all broke, we always have to pay the best price and give the best funding we can for our cyber staff. And so we look for the best ways we can find solutions that do the technology, and then I can use some of those savings towards better staff, better training, things in which I can't have automation, go back into those manual pieces in play, the workforce in play, that wraps around a lot of the cyber workforce things going on and things of that nature. So
it's computers replacing people for particular tasks.
Not only just particular tasks, but it's also computers replacing people in order for me to utilize people more efficiently and better.
Terry, does that sound right?
So I think that's definitely part of the picture. I would say that it goes a little bit beyond that too, in that we can use automation to do things that people just cannot do. And so it's not just automating some of the manual tasks, but giving us the opportunity to do things because of the volume of data, the types of things we're looking at that people just really cannot do, can't wrap their heads around to do. The other thing that I want to say is what it's not. So I hear automation used a lot when people really mean doing things online, like filling out forms online. I don't consider that automation. That's just putting stuff online. It's what you do with it after you get that data that really brings automation into the tasks.
So can you give me some examples of what DoD is doing now with computers and with automation that you just couldn't do 5 or 10 years ago as it relates to cybersecurity?
Yeah, I would think some of the things that we are doing right now that we perhaps struggled to do before is a lot of the kind of the network access control. In our case, we call it comply to connect, making sure that automatically making sure that systems are configured the way that they need to be before you even allow them onto the network. Right? So having the ability to block access automatically based on a rule set is something that I think was not easy to accomplish before. It's something that had to be done manually, that you had to specify which systems could be allowed, or you would allow everything to be there. So things like that really allow you to enforce rules better, policy-based rules.
And these are systems, not people. You're saying this system is not sufficiently secure, we're not going to allow it onto our network?
So I am talking about systems, yes, but we do that with people as well, right? So using role-based access control or something along those lines, if you can attribute characteristics to a person or even to non-person entities, then you can grant access to certain resources that way as well. So it's both the systems and the people.
So how are things changing at OPM compared to 5 or 10 years ago? What are you doing with automation now rather than people?
So to continue with what Terry was saying as well, I think another thing that's important to understand about automation today versus in the past we had to write these massive correlation rules in which if A plus B plus C or some variation, we don't have these automation rules. We're utilizing a lot of AI and behavior analytics that's come from the insider threat world and other things that said, okay, we have these wonderful tools. Why don't we use these analytics type things to create the rules for us?
Rules for what? Can you?
So when you have somebody connect to a network, I mean, when it's not just simply looking to see if the machine's in compliance or it has the right software. But now the rules allow: is this person have the right role? I mean, I can segment all the roles specifically down to the person, to their ID, and make sure that ID matches that machine or it has a certificate in place. And a lot of this is automated just by simply saying, yes, this AD directory is allowed to do this, allowed to do this. In the past, you had to write these complex rules that were hard to maintain. Now it's a lot easier. A lot of the technologies have come to that point. Advanced firewalls used to be strictly layer 2, layer 3, and now you're looking at layer 7, in which I can do specifically. I don't have to functionally call out an application or something of that nature. I can automatically say, okay, anybody that has a privileged account of any form can't utilize these types of applications or get to the internet. It makes creating rules not only more granular, but it also, and what's important is from a cybersecurity perspective, cybersecurity gets in the way of operations, and that has always been the elephant in the room. Is a complete 180 piece there, and in so many ways, security is not meant to stop operations. We're meant to try to find, identify risk, create different solutions, and be there. And so now with a lot of this automation, we're also able to support the business mission and the business functionalities. And so cybersecurity at OPM, that's what we're doing. We're looking at what the missions are and ensuring that OPM, who's an outwardly facing mission-oriented agency that not only supports government workers, but all the retirees and everybody else. And so I can't necessarily go out and fix everybody's machine, but I can make it to where no matter what happens out in the world, it doesn't necessarily come in, and I can still provide the mission orientation of, retirement paychecks or allowing people to see their personnel folders or things of that nature. So the automation allows us to protect the network, but it also allows us to provide people better, more streamlined access to your data that's out there.
Just so everyone knows, we're going to take questions from the audience for the last 10, 15 minutes. So think of them, have them prepared as you listen. So are there other things that the frontline cybersecurity worker at DoD or at OPM was doing 5 years ago that she's not doing now? Things that have been not necessarily were too complex for them, but were just sort of grunt work?
So I think a lot of the things that we are devoting some attention to now is automated patch management, those kind of things. So that was a very manual task before, and that's why it wasn't followed. That's when we look at all the breaches that happen. Often it's because people aren't applying patches to systems, and it seems like a very trivial thing, but it actually is painful to do that. And so we're trying to take the pain out of that by providing automated patch management systems. And one of the initiatives that we are promoting is a enterprise patch management service. So we'll make sure that we have a repository of all the relevant patches that our components can go to get the information that they need. We're trying to set up workflows so that they can say, I'm interested in that, and then they can get the patch delivered to them, and if they choose to have the patch applied to them. So the things that would take some of the pain out of keeping systems configured properly.
And so in other words, rather than someone looking and saying like, this is out of date, this is out of date, this is out of date, that's happening automatically now.
Yes.
And as a result, things are more patched and more secure.
Yes.
So, and not only is it out of date, but I can also say, oh, that's out of date, and either send them somewhere to get patched. So somebody goes maternity leave. That's always like a huge one. Somebody goes on maternity leave. They're out for 2-3 months. They come back. Their machine has been patched. Nobody's looked at it. I don't have to hunt that person down, drag their machine back. They can automatically just connect, get sent, and they can get the patches automatically before it gets on the network. We can send the patches to the machine, fix the machine. That way I don't have that gap in worker performance. The big thing about what people, it's not that so much what people do has changed. They still have SOC staff that look at dashboards. It's the dashboard that they're looking at has changed. With the correlation rules, it was like a real-time.
What's a dashboard in this context?
So like a
Describe
dashboard. So as you create all these rules and engines and things from a cybersecurity perspective, all these tools feed you back information, and a person used to have this dashboard of red lights or whatever goes off. It's not that that's changed so much, but what they're looking at has changed quite a bit. I'm no longer necessarily looking at the real time. I'm looking at the trends as well. So the nice thing about the AI and the behavior analytics is I have trends. And I had a discussion with staff today about the DDO, the dynamic denial of service attacks that you see it fluctuate against your firewalls on a regular basis. And now we start to look at some of those trends, and we can make informed decisions on how do we want to recalibrate our performance rules to segment specific areas or regions and things of that nature to ensure that, I'm expecting to see phishing emails from this region any moment because I'm watching the increase in scanning from that specific region or the DDoS attacks from that specific region. So now we say, okay, anything coming from this region, increase the sensitivity towards that email coming through because it's probably going to be some form of phishing or spear phishing and things of that nature. So they're still looking at dashboards. It's just how they ingest this data is much more complex and much more advanced. You're pushing the person from just being a general user who's just gone into cybersecurity to I actually need people who have a much deeper, broad interpretation of cybersecurity.
Because they're doing higher level work.
They're doing much higher level work.
So one thing people mean when they talk about automated cybersecurity sometimes are these sort of complex logic tools that look at the code of particular software and look for logical inconsistencies that could leave it vulnerable. And then fuzzing techniques, which are sort of a version of that. Are you guys looking at that or using some version of that at OPM or at DoD?
We are. We have an organization called the Joint Federated Assurance Center that helps us look at different software tools, software analysis tools, to determine, given the type of software you have, the situation you have, what is the appropriate tool, what's the right technique that you could use to do some sort of analysis, and when in the process do you do that, at what stages of development. One of the things we're promoting is you can run these tools really every night as you check in your software into some sort of repository. You can run tools that tell you, that give you an estimate of the software quality, right? And so fuzzing tools are certainly a part of that. But we're trying to, the earlier, as you know, the earlier you confront cybersecurity kind of vulnerability so they don't get introduced into the code in the first place, the better off we'll be. And so starting from that very inception level of doing software code analysis and making sure we're not introducing vulnerabilities at that stage. So fuzzing is part of that. It depends on what stage you're in, whether you do it during development or when you're doing operational testing of the system.
Does the quality of the software actually change overnight sometimes?
No, but a programmer could easily introduce a vulnerability during the day.
Okay.
So
I
it'll
see what
catch
you're saying.
that.
Yeah. At OPM, are you working with those tools?
We work with some of those tools and some of that stuff. I think the other thing we do is there's a lot more focus, not only just on the fuzzing area and that sort of thing, but we do in-depth penetration testing. And at times it can change overnight. We've adopted a lot of agile programming facets and things of that nature. So it really can go into the library that night, and by the next morning we've decided, the group's decided it needs some sort of different change or functionality increase, and things can happen fairly quickly. So yes, we actually do some of the code analysis before it goes out.
Yeah. Terry, Jeff was talking about sort of the value that automation brings visibility, that you can see more complex things and do more complex things. How is that playing out at DoD?
We certainly have our share of dashboards as well. When he was talking, I was thinking, that really is one of the fundamental things. I don't know if I would put that in the bucket of automation, but it certainly is a technology that we need to improve, the way to visualize massive amounts of information. So data analytics has got to be a key part of this. And if we can come up with the right kind of visualizations for people, identify anomalies in traffic or anomalies in user behavior, that's really what we're after. One of the things we're trying to do is create visualizations that can give you a feel for what our enterprise risk is. We need to be risk tolerant without introducing incredible vulnerabilities, and that requires knowing what your core missions are and making sure you're focusing on that. So we are paying more and more attention to how do you visualize enterprise risk, and I think that's a key aspect to where we need to kind of improve the technology's ability to look at massive amounts of information.
What role has Homeland Security Department's continuous diagnostics and mitigation played in this? Is that the sort of the automated tools that they're offering? How has that changed what you do?
Yeah, I laugh because I don't think Terry is subjected sometimes to, and we actually love CDMs.
CDM doesn't apply to DoD, is that correct? Or it does?
It doesn't, but our Comply to Connect program is kind of the same intent. Yeah.
Yeah, so we work very well with DHS and CDM. CDM was put in place and is there to eliminate a lot of the OMB cyber reporting requirements. We've been injecting that. I mean, it's good to do some of that. We've kind of expanded beyond that internally. So one of the things that we've done is we've adopted pretty much the entire concept of the risk management framework as outlined in 837. So as such, we've automated a lot of our compliance pieces as well. So the information security officer is now looking at a lot of these behavior analytics and compliance type reports as far as what the system does. So they can see the changes in real time, go back, ensure that it matches to what their security impact analysis was, what the change request was, and they can continue going down this pathway. So there's not necessarily ANA, the authorization, assessment and authorization process hasn't gone away. However, we're moving closer and closer to where it's completely automated to the point to where I won't have to go back to verify whether this application did its way correctly with a change control, because there'll be a systemized and accounted for documentation through the automation we have.
So the most recent, in a similar vein, the most recent cybersecurity executive order from the Trump administration talked a lot about shared services, and the White House Cyber Coordinator, Rob Joyce, has talked a lot about sort of building areas of excellence within the federal government that can share information and share services on cybersecurity. Do you see that as being a real pivot point or a real shift within the federal government in terms of relying more on automation? Can you sort of build more together?
Again, I laughed because you have the entire.
I don't know if I put that in the automation category, but I think that shared services will certainly drive us to more common solutions. And I think part of their goal is to take advantage of what industry has to offer in terms of commercial solutions for some of the common functionality, things like HR processing or something like that, email services, file management services. So I think that's the kind of shared services. In the area of cybersecurity, we really promote information sharing quite a bit, making sure that we are aware of the kind of things that we're seeing on industry through our defense industrial base partnership and sharing information between both the industry partners and within the DoD and the intelligence community as well. So it's really a focus on sharing information in addition to kind of the industry services that we will take advantage of.
So there's not a real advantage to shared other than sharing threat information. There's not a real advantage to shared services within government on cybersecurity?
Cybersecurity with shared services is a little bit more tricky and difficult. You're going to see you're going to see government shift farther and farther towards shared services simply because there's so much technology out there, there's so much automation. Building a server no longer means going down, dropping a disk in a tray, starting from scratch, adding your DNS features and things of that nature that we did 20 years ago. Now it's all virtualized. I have a virtual image that I know it takes me all of 15 minutes to spin up a new server, attach it to something, and then move on. You're going to see more and more, because of that, you're going to see more and more shared services based on virtualization of the infrastructure and shared infrastructure or platform as a service than you are going to see in cybersecurity. It's going to take a little while for that to translate into cybersecurity, not that there's not a lot of automation. There just happens to be a lot of different rules for a lot of different people. And so that you'll see edge shared services, web application firewalls or things of that nature, but you won't necessarily see the endpoints into a shared service model.
So you've talked a little bit about the distinction between your two worlds, because OPM is not a small agency by any means, but compared to the scope of DoD, it's, that's just massive, right? How does that affect, both in terms of, the sheer size of DoD and the funding? What can you do with automation that smaller agencies can't?
We are really trying to drive towards enterprise solutions. It's tricky in the DoD because it is so big, right? And so the individual services, military services need to move out and doing their own thing. And so it's trying to bring all that together. And really, we have to demonstrate that by efficiencies, by cost savings, by providing a better solution, a more secure solution. And so that's the direction that we need to be going. If we can do things in common. So one of the services that could potentially be a broader government thing is the enterprise patch management service, right? The ability to make patches centrally available and to provide a workflow process where people can register for what they want. I could see that easily being a cross-government kind of capability should we choose to do that. But within the DoD, it's things like we're trying to provide common functionality for insider threat, user activity monitoring kind of things. And so I think it's providing common tools that we get gains in efficiencies that way, particularly cost efficiencies.
Are you doing some version of automated patch management?
We do,
Yeah.
and that's one of the pieces from that CDM helped implement and think. But as she was saying, you're going to see a lot more platform or application type things, like, and the whole idea of CDM and GSA's program in which they purchase large bulk products was the idea of now we can start purchasing all the same software. And since we're all purchasing the same software, eventually you're going to start to see the service model and where you just go and download those licenses or upload the licenses. And we can work into a point in where we have across-the-board whitelisting, to which DHS and their Einstein program or DoD internally can watch. I know these types of applications are supposed to be there. That way I can limit my threat vector due to the fact that I'm limiting what possible software solutions there are out there.
So what are you guys seeing in industry that interests you in terms of automating cybersecurity?
First, I guess the first big one would be, and this is odd coming from cybersecurity, but automated help desk type functionalities, automated service catalogs, things of that nature. And why is it huge in cybersecurity is because cybersecurity is there because users do things that users aren't supposed to do. So if we look at the best way to make users happier at what they do or happy how they interact with their machinery or their IT or their environment, then they're less likely to try and find ways to break the rules or things of that nature. So service catalogs, automated service catalogs, right? I want to get some form of software, therefore I go and do X, right? And then get that training out there to make it happen. And that's another thing in which the civilian world has a lot of experience in is getting cybersecurity training out to the users. The government, I know for our perspective, we started, okay, here's your annual cybersecurity training. You flip through the PowerPoint slide or watch the videos, and you do, I mean, it's not very interactive, and we're purchasing modules now and working on modules now to try to expand that concept, expand those pieces in which we can get the users more interactive, and I want to try to take that interactive capability and move it out into their personal realm. That way, when they go home, they have those protections in place as well. Because they don't always have the protections you have when they're sitting at their desk. And if I can protect them or school them so they're protecting themselves at home, they're going to take that knowledge and use the same knowledge at work as well.
Terry?
So I think for us, the thing that we're focused on right now is what can cloud service providers do for us, right? So I think that they have some very good security mechanisms built in place. We're very interested in what we can do with containerized kind of applications because it is the data that we're trying to protect. And so coming up with the right kind of mechanisms to protect government information in a commercial cloud environment is something that is of high interest to us. And so I think that we can really learn a lot from what cloud service providers are doing to kind of protect their various constituents, right? The people who are taking advantage of the services they have. Government is very interested in doing that as well.
Would that be DoD information in the commercial cloud, or would that be the JRSS and the DoD cloud?
So it's both. We definitely want to take advantage of commercial clouds, and where we need to, we'll have government clouds, what we call on-premises clouds, but we are looking very seriously at taking advantage of what the cloud providers have to offer inherently in their own environments.
Are there things that commercial companies and the private sector can do with automation that just isn't a good fit for government?
Well, the one thing I always say that it's hard to always compare commercial to government, just simply because commercial is you're there for business. It's internal thinking. Mm-hmm. Government, we're here for the people, right? So we can't necessarily shut down everything we do to protect data or protect whatever we have because our entire focus, our entire existence is for the people. And so a lot of times it makes it somewhat difficult to utilize some of the concepts that commercial has. And we get beat up about it because it's like, oh, why don't you just do this? Well, because if I do this, not every retired person in Florida has, Windows 10, the latest iPhone, and everything else. So I have to think about our customer, which is the people of the United States, in every solution I try to do. So I have to find something that works to where I can continue to serve the people.
Audience questions? Just raise your, one there, we have a mic coming to you, and then a couple on this side.
Yeah, hi. Frederick Salveson with Disruptive Technologies. I represent a edge of network cybersecurity solution that takes signatures at different levels. It could be secure or non-secure and applies them to the network. And one of the things that we can obviously do is respond to those signature threats immediately and shut down the access to them or turn off the ports. But every one of our customers so far has said that they will not allow that. So the question is, when will that comfort level get to be high enough, or have you guys thought about that and looked at that? And is that on the horizon, or is that something that just is not, people are not ready to do yet? Or are you already doing it? I don't know it.
So shut off the ports on our networks if we see something coming to us. Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry, say it again.
So are you saying your technology allows you to shut off the ports on our networks if we see something?
Yes.
Yeah. So I do think in certain situations we probably do respond that way already. As a automated rule, I think we'll have to grow a comfort level to do that. As an automated rule that would shut it off.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Do you have a time frame that you might be able to accept those things, or it's kind of like a proof thing? You got to prove it works.
You do have to prove it works. I can't give you a time frame.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions over there?
William Gafford from D&B Cybersecurity. I have several, if you can suffer me for a minute. One, thank you for your public service, and if I read your mini device, thank you for your service, sir. You're talking about data and everybody's data in this room, right, and protecting it. If you had the capability to protect the data at the core level and use the controls that were automated, that if something happened, you set the standards of that data and how it acted from the user's point of view, and it automatically did an action, is that something that is viable to the two organizations? So say you had a user and their role is to just do analytics and they're doing queries, and all of a sudden they take a gig of data, put it on a thumb drive and walk out. Or send it in an email. I know everybody said ooh, because that usually doesn't happen. But when something out of the ordinary happens or something like that, but you had the ability to automatically see it, do something about it, and then the system alerted you to it, is that something that the government will be open to seeing, hearing, and expressing more interest in? It's your automation part of it, controlling data at the finite level.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Go ahead.
I mean, what you described, the scenario you described is kind of a insider threat, user activity monitoring, and be proactive in response to that. Absolutely, that's something that we have high interest in.
I'm sorry, so could we just keep it to the one question, because I just want to make sure that other people get an opportunity.
Thank you.
We'll come back.
Yeah, we can come back. I don't know how broad this was. Were there other questions on this side?
Did you
Was
want
that,
to
yeah,
answer
right
that
there.
one?
Hi, I'm an innovation specialist at the U.S. Geological Survey. I do a lot of work on crowdsourcing and citizen science. And to what extent does a lot of the automated services require human input initially so that it can be automated? I think a lot of automation requires human analysis that then allows a computer to be trained to do this automatically. So to what extent can crowdsourcing and citizen science help to enable automated services?
I can't think of any way in which you can do a true cybersecurity program and not have a sense of crowdsourcing. And I'll give you an example. So if you drop a firewall into a network, it's fairly easy. You put the firewall in, you watch the traffic flow through, and essentially you start picking out the outliers. The stuff you know is bad, okay, traffic going overseas. Yes, that's easy to select and say, no, we can't do that. But eventually you get to the point where you're looking at the specific applications themselves, and it's at that point that you start to bring all the different program offices in, all the different owners of the data and things of that nature, and go, okay, is this really what you really want to do? So automation is completely about crowdsourcing, not only crowdsourcing, but agile. You can't really do a lot of automation without an agile perspective of, okay, we're going to move this 1 foot forward every day until we get to a point where we know where the boundaries are and our boxes are. Does that answer your question? It was difficult for me to formulate an answer simply because in my mind, everything you do in a cybersecurity perspective is a crowdsourcing or an agile perspective in order to get those every days forward. Cybersecurity is about selling to your customer as much as you can, just due to the fact that we're here to try to create boundaries and everybody else is trying to expand those boundaries. And so you have to rely a lot on your customer and getting their input.
Other questions? We're down here. Just 1 second, the microphone will be there with you.
I can just ask it, that's fine. I was just more interested in what you were, Hello. I was just more interested in what you're talking about as far as the enterprise patch management. Would that be an opportunity for commercial vendors to solve? I mean, that seems to be such a persistent problem year after year after year, that why is government, trying to build that out?
Oh, it's absolutely it's a problem that we intend to outsource. Yeah, it's a concept that we're promoting right now. We have not gotten a solution for it yet, but absolutely we're going to be looking to industry to help us solve that problem.
So right now it's custom built or it's internal and it's not?
It's in the formative stages, right? So a lot of the individual services and components have come up with their own solutions. We're looking at an enterprise solution, and we are looking to get industry to provide that solution.
Other questions? One over there.
You get to ask your second question now, too. So I'm also involved in a technology that's all around natural language processing. We've talked to a couple cyber companies about that. Have you guys looked at natural language processing and the application to cybersecurity to identify trends and look at sites based on the content of the sites?
We started looking at it. I haven't necessarily traveled completely down that realm yet, but I have been looking at it and been working with some of that stuff. But that's a little bit farther down the road.
Yeah, it's pretty advanced and it's cool stuff, but it's a lot to grasp. So.
Because I owe you a second one too, and then we're going to close up pretty soon. We'll do these two, and then you go ahead, and then we'll go to you.
So you were talking about the dashboards and scanning and compliance and all that stuff. If you had a tool, would you prefer a tool that did a snapshot in time, like an Nessa scan that you scanned and set the time at night it ran, you came back in the morning, you looked at that report, or would you like the tool that persistently looked at anything on your network with an IP in real time, all the time, and gave you, and it only used about 2% of usage, 2% of CPU usage, so it wasn't heavy, but it allowed your infrastructure the capability to always be available to know compliance, threats that are being available, attack vectors that were coming at you, and for your administrators to immediately act and react.
So I'm guessing you know about such a tool. I'd love to hear more about it.
I do, because I have one. So, and so in discussing some of the advanced technologies that have come out in the last, I don't know, five years or so, why do I have to pick? I can do both. Right? And so I do both. I do scans on a regular basis, but as everyone has realized, doing a scan across the network, it can take a week, 2 weeks, a month. It can take a long period of time to do that scan. So yes, I have not only scans that run, but we also have real-time automated scans of not only every piece of software on that device, but every process that runs, every library that's open, every time something's fed to the CPU, it's being read. So,
All right, and last one over here.
So first, I don't have a product to get through. From a practitioner perspective, I wanted to ask a little bit about talent, having spent a lot of time building security intel teams, and what are the things that you see are challenges in terms of attracting the kind of talent that's going to enable you to implement these type of automation technologies, and how are you going about being able to bring them in to the government space?
What we found with attracting the right kind of talent to where we are is once they get in, they love the mission and they stay for the mission. And that's just across the board, that's true, because it is such an exciting space to be and people are making such a huge difference. Getting them in is the issue. So we have created, it's just in its infancy, a cyber accepted service for government employees where we can bring people in on a different kind of pay scale. So we can bring people in and give them opportunities to rotate around. And so we think that offers a lot of promise. The other thing we really need to do is give people the opportunity to keep their skills up, because it's a highly dynamic area. And if you don't give the people the opportunity to do that, they'll walk out the door.
Yeah, mission, encouraging them with mission's huge. And then at the same time, we also promote from within and then do a lot of training.
All right, so we've got 1 minute left. I want to ask one last question. So are we saving money by automating things? And are there more cost savings in the future?
I think the opportunity to save money is absolutely there. We really want to provide the opportunity to automate the routine tasks and give those people give them the skills, the opportunity to do more exciting, more technical, challenging work. And so I don't know that I'd put a dollar figure on cost savings. What we're really after is improved security. And I think if we can redirect the effort and the investment to focus on actually making a difference and improving the security of the systems, that's really what it's all about.
Improved efficiencies. It's not necessarily cost savings or expenditures. The expenditures from an IT perspective they ebb and flow in different areas. But it's cybersecurity has the opportunity and the duty to find efficiencies to save the organization money to be used either elsewhere or in manpower or something of that nature.
Thank you both for joining us. Thanks everyone for being here.